I was the black sheep until a DNA test proved I was the real son and the golden boy was the affair baby. So I made them kick him out. I'm Alex, 21 years old, and I've been the black sheep my entire life. My father David never liked me very much. It was evident. He ran my grandfather's little HVAC business, which he started years ago. But, here's the deal. The business does not truly belong to him. My grandfather established a trust, and it is only supposed to benefit the biological grandchildren. Basically, my father works there but has no actual power, which he has always disliked. I think he isn't good with money or anything. So my grandfather did not trust him with the business's funds. Now things get much messier. My half-brother Ryan is 23 years old and has always been the golden child. My father treats him as if he can do no wrong. I've always been blamed for everything. It doesn't matter what it is. It is somehow my fault. I'd never fully understood why until recently. About 3 years ago, my father discovered these old journals that my mother Laura had kept for years. And let me tell you, when he found them, it seemed like my entire world had turned upside down. Apparently, my mother had a long affair that no one knew about. Her sweetheart, who died in a vehicle accident roughly 12 years ago, was among those involved. Here's the major discovery. This affair lasted for years. My father has kept this information a secret since he discovered it. They had a screaming match for days. At first I assumed it was simply their normal fights, but then my father dropped the bomb on me and Ryan. He basically informed us that we both needed to take DNA testing. Like what? Ryan and I were just sitting there, startled. It turns out that my grandfather, who began the business, despised my mother because he felt she was deceitful. He was convinced that one of us, or both of us, wasn't my father's biological child. So my father is furious because if it is discovered that either of us is not his child, that person will receive nothing. Nada. There is no claim to the family company or fortune, and I could see it in his eyes. He insisted on me being the one kicked out. He's always treated me as if I didn't belong, like I wasn't a member of the family. I used to assume it was just me being paranoid, but the DNA test proved it. He just cared about this because of the business and money. Otherwise, he would not have cared if I was his or not. So we all walked down to this lab for our testing. The vehicle ride there was certainly one of the worst experiences of my life. My father was very quiet, staring straight ahead as if he already knew what the results would be. Ryan sat next to me in the back seat, grinning like the arrogant jerk he always is, as if he knew I'd be the one kicked out of the family. I just sat there, staring out the window, trying to process the notion that my entire future was dependent on a DNA test. We finished the test, but the wait was excruciating. They said we'd have the findings in a few days, but it felt like years. I barely slept, lying awake, contemplating all the ways this could go wrong. Honestly, I wasn't sure which would be worse. Finding out I wasn't my father's child and being kicked out, versus discovering Ryan wasn't his child and witnessing my father's world fall. Finally, the day arrived. We visited the lawyer's office to obtain the results. My heart was beating the entire time. The lawyer opened the packet, and it felt like the entire room became silent. He then read the results. I am my father's biological son, while Ryan is not. The entire room just froze. My father's face turned pale, and Ryan simply looked, his jaw dropping as if he couldn't believe it. I couldn't help but get a strange sensation of satisfaction. After all of these years of being treated poorly, I was the true son, not Ryan, the golden boy. But this is when things become even crazier. It turns out that the house we live in is also involved in this whole trust situation. It was only supposed to go to the biological grandchildren, thus it's mine now. My father had always expected Ryan would get everything. However, Ryan is no longer entitled to anything legally. Everything, from the business to the house, it is mine. My father said nothing during the journey back home. Ryan, on the other hand, kept talking, saying that this wasn't fair and that there had to be an error. He acted as if the test results were a joke. But my father seemed broken. I've never seen him like this before. He'd always been a gruff, remote guy, but now he appeared to have had his entire life ripped apart. That night, my father tried to make things right. He entered my room, and I could tell he had been crying. I'd never seen my father weep before, and it terrified me out. He sat down on the edge of my bed and began talking, saying he was sorry, that he had messed up, and that he wanted to make things right between us. He appeared frantic, as if he were begging me to forgive him. But I could not. Not after all. Not after the way he treated me throughout my life. So I told him, if you really want to make it up to me, kick Ryan out. You were ready to kick me out if I wasn't your son, so do the same with him. My father just gazed at me, as if he couldn't believe what I was saying. He began to protest, suggesting we could go to family counseling and try to solve things together. But I wouldn't have it. I told him straight up, "You were going to throw me out if I wasn't your kid. Now it's Ryan's turn." He cried some more, but eventually agreed. That night Ryan was kicked out of the house, and my father was in tears the entire time. He didn't yell or anything, just simply told Ryan he needed to leave. Ryan was obviously furious, but he didn't have much of an option. He packed up his belongings and left. You'd think that after all of this, things would improve between me and my parents, right? Nope. If anything, things worsened. My father has been walking around like a broken man ever since. And my mother has been completely silent, as if she hasn't mentioned anything about it. She acts as if none of this is occurring, which irritates me even more. I don't know what comes next. But all I can say is that this family is beyond saving. After Ryan was kicked out, you'd think things would calm down, right? Nope. If anything, things became more awkward around the house. My father, David, was strolling around like a ghost, rarely speaking to anyone, while my mother, Laura, remained silent, pretending that none of this had occurred. Despite the fact that I was still living there, the house felt empty. I thought kicking Ryan out would make a difference, but it only made my parents more distant. The first few days after Ryan went, it was as if everyone was waiting for something to happen. I could tell my father was trying to figure out what to do next, but instead of speaking to me like a normal person, he remained silent. I could tell he was hurting, but I wasn't in the mood to comfort him. The guy has spent the majority of my life treating me as if I didn't matter. And now I was meant to feel bad for him. Yeah. Not happening. My father attempted to have a serious conversation with me one night approximately a week after Ryan left. He sat me down in the living room, looking as if he had not slept in days. He continued fidgeting as if he didn't know how to start the discussion, which was unusual given that my father was always the type of guy who blurted whatever came to mind. Finally he began talking, and it was kind of pathetic. He said, "Alex, I know I haven't been the best father, and I know things are complicated now, but I really want to fix this." He went on and on about wanting to restore our connection and make things right. He even started crying, which surprised me because, as I previously stated, I had never seen my father weep before this whole DNA disaster. I let him speak for a bit, but the more he said, the angrier I became. I was sitting there listening to him apologize and express how much he cared. But I just snapped. I told him, "You don't actually care about me. You never did. You only care about the business and the money." My father looked as if I had smacked him across the face. He sat there astonished, as if he couldn't believe what I was saying. But it was true. I was not going to let him pretend that this was a heartwarming family reunion. It was not. He attempted to argue, of course. He was thinking, "No, Alex, it's not like that. I love you. I've always loved you. I just didn't know how to show it." That's true. Following that, things became even more strained in the house. My father stopped trying to talk to me completely, which I was fine with. My mother still did not say anything. She was as still as a statue. I began spending more time at work, attempting to avoid being home as much as possible. The family business wasn't my dream job, but it kept me occupied. That's when Ryan began calling me. Initially I ignored his calls. I mean, why would I want to speak to him? The person had already caused enough harm. I let him ramble for a while, but then he dropped a bombshell. Ryan informed me that our mother had cheated with more than one man. Yes, apparently the man who perished in the vehicle accident was not the only one. There was another guy, a co-worker from her previous job, and Ryan threatened to notify our father if I didn't assist him get back into the house. I was floored. I knew my mother wasn't perfect, but I wasn't expecting this. Ryan went on to declare that he too had proof. He claimed Dad had always suspected that none of us were truly his children. Ryan was basically blackmailing me, saying, "Look, Alex, I don't want to blow this thing up, but if you don't help me out, I'm telling Dad everything. He'll kick Mom out, and this whole family is going to be destroyed." I said I'd think about it and hung up the phone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall, trying to figure out what the heck I was doing. Ryan had always been a jerk, but this was another level. If he wanted to burn everything down, then so be it. Things worsened a few weeks after Ryan threatened me with the entire "I'm going to blow up the family" stuff. I honestly didn't think it was possible, but here we are. My father, David, was still moping around the home as if someone had died. And my mother, Laura, remained as silent as ever. I was doing my best to stay out of it all by going to work, returning home and keeping my head down. But of course nothing remains quiet for long. One night I overheard my father yelling, "You think I don't know? You think I'm an idiot? My mother finally responded, her voice trembling. David, please, it was years ago. It doesn't mean anything now. My heart sank. Ryan had finished it. He told my father about the other guy, who my mother had been meeting behind his back. I felt a strange combination of emotions. Relief, rage, and guilt. I mean, I knew Ryan was capable of doing it, but part of me doubted he'd follow through. Now here we were. My father stood there looking more shattered than I had ever seen him, as if he had aged 10 years in one day. He didn't say much beyond asking if I knew about the other guy. I did not lie. I told him I found out after Ryan called me a few weeks ago. He nodded, his face turning pale, and then uttered something that struck me hard. I never trusted your mom after that first affair. I didn't trust either of you boys either. That's why I treated you the way I did. I was just standing there, transfixed. So, sure, I suspected it. However, hearing him say it out had a different impact. Then he abruptly left. For the following few days, it was like walking on eggshells within the house. My father stopped talking to my mother totally. He'd be in his office or at work, while she was always upstairs, confined in their bedroom. It was strange, yet at the same time I felt like it was long overdue. They should have divorced years ago, in all honesty. Then Ryan showed up. Yeah, after all that, he had the nerve to return to the house. It was Saturday. He waited at the door, a pleased expression in his eyes. Oh, come on, Alex, don't be like that. Look, I didn't want to have to tell Dad, but you left me no choice. You kicked me out, remember? I couldn't believe what I heard. You're really going to stand there and act like you're the victim in all of this? Ryan groaned, as if he was already bored of the conversation. Look, it's not about that. I just want things to go back to the way they were. We were a family before all this, man. I couldn't help laughing. A family? Are you serious? I told him straight. He was no longer welcome here. He smirked as if he had achieved some sort of victory. Fine, but don't be surprised when Mom and Dad end up splitting because of all this. You're just as much to blame as I am. He turned and went away, leaving me standing on the porch, angry. After he left, I went back inside, attempting to relax, but his words echoed in my mind. You are equally too responsible. Was he correct? Had I had a role in breaking this family apart? I didn't want things to return to the way they were before. This family was broken, and no amount of false apologies or half-hearted attempts to repair it would change that. Update 2. Things did not calm down following Ryan's visit. In fact, it seemed like everything was unraveling quicker than ever. My father was barely at home anymore. He'd leave early for work, get home late, and when he arrived, he was simply locked up in his office. My mother, Laura, was still not talking to him or me. I began to wonder if I had handled things differently with Ryan, or if I hadn't pushed so hard for him to be sent out, whether this would have turned out the way it did. But every time I felt terrible, I reminded myself that they were ready to kick me out if I weren't my father's biological kid. So, why should I care? But, here's the deal. Whether you care or not, living in a house where everyone pretends the other does not exist is really twisted up. A few weeks after Ryan's brief visit, my father approached me and said, I can't do this anymore. I inquired, Your mom? He nodded, his gaze firmly fixated on his hands. I can't forgive her for what she's done. I thought I might, but I can't. There is too much harm. For a little while, I was unsure how to answer. I mean, I wasn't surprised. This seemed like it had to happen sooner or later, but hearing him say it was different. So that's it. Are you just going to end it? My father sighed and finally looked up at me. Yeah, I know it's a lot to take in. Was I good with that? Did it really matter if I was? It wasn't like I had any influence over what happened between them. Despite the fact that things had been bad for a long time, the idea of my parents splitting up seemed weird. Yeah, I guess, I murmured, unsure how to explain my feelings. My father stepped up and touched me on the shoulder, which felt strange and uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Alex. I know this hasn't been easy for you. He then exited the room, leaving me sitting there. I expected he'd ultimately tell her, and I wasn't sure I wanted to be present when it happened. And then one night, something happened. I was in my room trying to fall asleep when I heard shouting downstairs. My heart sunk, and I realized quickly that my father had finally told her. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but I could hear enough. My mother was crying and yelling about how he couldn't do it and how she'd made mistakes. But she still loved him. However, my father refused to back down. The next morning she did not come out of her room at all, and my father pretended nothing had happened. He sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee and reading the newspaper as it was any other day. I had no idea what to say to him, so I said nothing. I got some food and departed for work, hoping to avoid unpleasant interactions. But by the time I went home that night, things had escalated. My mother had packed up a lot of her belongings. Her baggage were sitting in the corridor, and she stood there waiting. She held me and whispered, "I am sorry, Alex. I hope we can figure this out someday." I did not hug her back. I stood there, paralyzed, waiting for her to let go. When she finished, she collected her luggage and departed without saying anything else. And just like that, she was gone. Update 3. After my mother went, it was only me and my father in the house. It felt much emptier than it should have, as if all the air had been sucked out of the area. We didn't say much after that night. He was still doing his thing, coming to work and pretending everything was normal. Me? I was just trying to watch TV and forget about how my family was coming apart. Then I received a text from Ryan. "We need to talk." I nearly laughed when I saw that. What are we talking about? The dude had destroyed our family, blackmailed me, and now he wanted to talk. I initially dismissed the message, but then my phone began to fill up with more texts. "It's important. I'm serious, Alex. You can't ignore me forever." He was persistent. After about 10 texts, I gave up and called him. I asked him what the hell he wanted. Ryan sighed, as if he were the victim here. "Yeah, but come on, Alex. Don't act like this family was perfect before that. I don't know. I did what I had to do." I could feel my blood boiling. "What did you have to do? You ruined everything, Ryan. You threw us all under the bus because you were mad you got kicked out. Don't act like you're some innocent bystander." He remained silent for a second, and I was hoping he would finally stop talking, but he didn't. He continued going, talking on how there is still time to correct things. We could stage some kind of intervention or family meeting, get everyone in the same room and force them to talk it out. He truly thought this would work. Like a silly film in which everyone cuddles at the end and everything is good. I cut him off. "Ryan, stop. Just stop. This isn't a movie, okay? You can't just force people to forgive each other and move on. Dad's done. He's already filed." He went silent for a moment, and I could hear it in his tone when he finally spoke. He seemed to be saddened rather than angry, like someone who has lost something. We all did. "Look," I remarked with a softer tone, "I get it. This sucks for all of us, but there's nothing we can do. It's too late." Ryan didn't answer immediately away, and for a brief moment I assumed he had finally understood. But then he added, "Well, I'm going to try anyway." And that's when I realized Ryan was a lost cause. He believed that if we all worked hard enough, everything would miraculously be fixed. I wish it was that simple, but life doesn't work that way. I kept trying to immerse myself in work, distracting myself from the disarray at home. But no matter how much I tried to ignore it, it hung over me like a gloomy cloud. One night after another long day at work, I returned home to find my father sitting at the kitchen table. When I stepped in, he glanced up and talked to me for the first time in quite some time. "Alex," he spoke gently. I froze and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't expect that." "For what? For everything?" He replied by staring down at his hands. "I've messed up. It wasn't a significant emotional event, but it was something. Perhaps things weren't completely broken after all. Perhaps there was still a small piece to rescue between me and my father." We did not hug or anything like that. He merely sat there, staring down, as if he couldn't meet my gaze. I thought he was the most honest I'd ever seen. No strong guy attitude, no cool distance, simply tired and sorrowful. We sat silently for a while. It was not pleasant, but it was not aggressive either. Just silent. And somehow that silence felt more like progress than all of our previous shouting and begging. Finally I rose up and informed him I was going to bed. He nodded and said nothing else. I'm not sure what he did after that, but I heard the TV later, so he was probably trying to get back to normal, whatever that meant. Since then, things have remained strange, but at least they are consistent. My mom hasn't returned. She called once and said she was going to stay with her sister for a bit. She didn't ask to speak to me. Ryan hasn't texted back. Thank God. And me? I'm still trying to figure out what to do with all I've inherited, including the business and the property, as well as the damage, the stillness and the strange feeling of being both the winner and the only one left standing. People believe that finding out you are the real son will seem like a win. However, it simply feels like being left behind with the rubble. I did not want the throne. I just wanted a family. And now I've got neither.